meeting for February 17th, 2021. And we have 5 cases on the agenda today, but I'm thinking that possibly 4 of them will be taken together because they're all regarding the same property. But planning and zoning staff can guide me on that one. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first case. Who is presenting the first case?
I wonder, can they hear you?
I don't know. I'm not on mute.
I can hear you very well.
Councilor
Ms.
Abbott,
Yes.
I can hear you, but I'm not aware of the agenda to know what is the first case.
The first case is Chris. I think Ms. Sims is the one who's presenting, and she was momentarily absent from her station. So now she's re-arrived. So we're on case number 1.
Okay. So we're ready to present? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Akri Sims, serving as the ZAC planner for the city of Birmingham. Our first case on the agenda will be ZAC 2020-00026. The applicant just informed us that he would like to appear on the March 3rd agenda for P&Z.
Okay, so we will defer this item to the March 3rd agenda because clearly if he's not here, we can't do anything.
That's correct.
Excuse me, Councilor Abbott.
Yes.
They may have had a problem with the link. The link in the agenda was missing an I in Birmingham, and I had problems getting logged on.
Okay, so the link, yeah, but they've just asked to be moved to the March 3rd meeting.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry about
that. Right, he came on earlier and stated that to us.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now that we have deferred item 1 to the March 3rd agenda, we will go to item 2.
Okay, item 2. That's the South Side project, and they have agenda 32, 33, and 6. So do we want to go in order, Councilor Abbott?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason not to go in order. The question that I had was, is there a reason that we would call them up all together, or do we need to keep them separate? Because I know, well, I've attended the neighborhood meetings where this has been discussed, and it's really all one big giant project.
Correct.
So unless Mr. Hilliard objects or anyone else objects, I think we ought to consider all of theirs at the same time. Okay. Everything regarding the Southtown redevelopment project.
Yes, I agree. I agree, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, can we skip and go to number 35 because he is not part of that?
Okay, yeah, let's do that because the other 3 will probably require a good bit of discussion.
Okay. So we'll go to the ZAC 2020-0035, and this is in the Southside neighborhood. An application to change zone district boundaries from M1 Light Industrial District to MUD Mixed Use Downtown. And this is filed by Jamie Watkins, representing the owner, HCP TDG Avenue LLC, for the properties located at 2300 and 2312 First Avenue South. Is it any way I can share my screen to
Yes, ma'am. You actually do have presenter privileges now.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to I'm sorry, you all. I wanted to share
Yeah, we're seeing it now.
Okay, you are, okay, okay. Thank you. Okay, and the proposed use is to allow office, retail, and restaurant use for this project. The city's long-range land use identifies the property as light industrial. The proposed rezoning request is consistent with the long-range land use plan. The neighborhood's recommendation, the 5 Points South Neighborhood Association held a special call meeting on January 5th, 2021 to review the proposed project and voted to recommend approval for the rezoning request. The vote was 5 approved and 0 denied. The Zoning Advisory Committee met at its regular scheduled meeting on Tuesday, February the 16th, 2021 to review the proposed rezoning request, and they voted to approve the proposed rezoning request. So that is the presentation for that applicant. So is Mr. Eric Morrison on the line?
Yes, hi, Ms. Sims. I can share my screen if
Sure. If
I can get presenter
I'll
rights,
stop
I guess.
sharing. Hold on, let me stop sharing. Uh-oh.
Got it.
Got it, okay,
I think we're good now.
okay.
Um, can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, counselors. I believe Ms. Abbott and Mr. Hilliard have both seen this package before, so please allow me to just kind of run through it as a refresher. My name is Eric Morrison. I'm with Bear Properties, representing the applicant on this project called the Hardwick. It's located on 23rd Street and 1st Avenue South, fronts directly onto Rotary Trail. This is a historic redevelopment project, adaptive reuse. This is a 110-year-old building. It is home to the Hardwick Company, or one of its predecessors since the early 1920s. It is, as you can see, a very cool and flexible canvas on which to design a historical renovation project. As you can see, there are some overhead cranes in the upper right-hand shot. The plans currently call to preserve artifacts like those overhead cranes and other machinery that you see in the building there. It was historically a fabricated and prefabricated steel processing plant, so that's why you're seeing all that equipment and machinery. The project will be financed by federal and state historic tax credits, and as you can see from the condition of the building, both inside and out, it can use a breath of fresh air. This is what the project can ultimately look like. It is a mixed-use project, planning about 41,000 square feet of usable office space and 9,500 square feet of restaurant or retail space, spread out over 3 floors. It's a pedestrian-friendly design. I'll come back to this in a second, but if you notice here on the screen, kind of a large opening here on 23rd Street. I'll show you in the next slide what that will look like on the inside and how that makes it, pedestrian-friendly. Rotary Trail does come to grade at 23rd Street right here. You can see the bottom of the screen. We kind of look at this as like the eastern trailhead of Rotary Trail, at least as it currently stands. I mentioned the pedestrian plaza there. We will be endeavoring to get WELL certification for this project. If those of you are familiar with LEED certification, which talks to building efficiency, WELL certification is geared towards the building occupants and the health of the environment for the building occupants. In addition, and sort of related to WELL, we'll also be building in all of the kind of necessary post-COVID features that you'd like to include in a post-COVID development for the health of the occupants, whether that's touchless touch points for access, for doors and elevator call buttons, or polar ionization in the HVAC system to filter out pathogens in the air. We're also going to be looking to utilize PACE financing to finance green features for this project. Those can include solar panels, electric car charging, green walls, and reuse of rainwater. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, and it's a federal program that is currently on the books with the state. but no project has taken advantage of it in the 6 or so years that it's been on the books. So we are working with the state right now to try to basically roll out that program and kind of offer up this project as somewhat of a guinea pig to kind of establish best practices, but also show, kind of show the state how we can bring important environmental features like this to the forefront and make it a reality. This will be a $24 million project, hard and soft costs, with projected $51 million in local and state GDP contribution. That's using a NAIOP multiplier. During construction, we're projecting 431 jobs to be supported, 347 jobs during the ongoing operations and occupancy. This is what I was pointing out a second ago. This is the inside view of that large opening there right on 23rd Street, and we're calling this the indoor portion of our pedestrian plaza. This does a few things. Number one, this slide kind of showcases the scale of the western side of the building and the 3 stories, the ability for us to build 3 stories inside of the current shell of the building. And you can see there's 2 stories of office space over ground floor restaurant space. Central elevator core is right there on the right-hand side of the screen. Gathering areas sort of in the middle of the screen there. And as you'll see on some future slides and the floor plans, this is a really kind of a central congregating point for all 3 entrances to the property. Really makes it truly a mixed-use property where all the uses can come together. This is something we fought very hard with to preserve with the Alabama Historical Commission. They tried to tell us that it wasn't historical, but seeing that we felt it was a very, very important part of the project for all the reasons I just mentioned, and thankfully we were successful in being able to preserve it. Here's a cut-through shot from the west side of the building that just shows you kind of how office stacks above the retail and restaurant on the first floor on the west side. Here's a first floor plan. Mixture of basically half and half office and restaurant space. You can see on the left-hand side there's restrooms called out. Those will be common restrooms for all of the restaurant and retail space in a similar way that Pepper Place does it. If you've been to Pepper Place and been to a restaurant over there, you'll know what I'm talking about with the common area restrooms for those spaces. Provides efficiency, also provides a way for patrons to basically kind of mix and mingle. So once again, kind of leading to the true mixed use nature of the project. You're not kind of cordoned off into your own space all the time. This is the second floor, all office space. Takes advantage of natural light, both via skylights and through light wells. We can see where it says open in the middle of the screen. Those are light wells. And then here on the left side of the screen, this is that view from above into that indoor pedestrian plaza. And then the third floor, once again, all office space, plenty of natural light coming in from above and from the sides, and then light well coming out from that indoor plaza. We'll also plan to have an outdoor terrace right here on the southwest corner of the property on the third floor, which will overlook Rotary Trail and great views of the city from there. We think it's a pretty cool and important feature for the tenants of the property. Here's a shot from the north side of the project. This is looking to the south, just kind of once again showing an improved Powell Avenue, and then looked upon by restaurant and office tenants. Mixture of uses, really kind of side by side and above and below, with a raised patio, very pedestrian friendly. We really think this fits the fabric of the neighborhood very well, with the Rotary Trail being out front and just the pedestrian nature of the neighborhood. Those are all my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I would ask at this time if anyone has, starting with Councilor Hilliard, of course, if anyone has any questions or comments.
Well,
Really?
no, thank you, Madam Chair. I have seen that we've gone over this before. I'm in good standards. I'm just go over it again, and I don't have any questions at this point.
Okay. Well, my only question, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the rezoning from M1 to MUD. The question I have is whether y'all have met with our Economic Development Department yet at the city. This is just an item of curiosity.
We've had very initial conversations. Nothing concrete. Nothing has been officially submitted or discussed in particular. Just very initial conversations.
Okay, because I know that the parking situation was something that you were, well, obviously you're in need of parking because First Avenue doesn't have a lot of parking on it. So Powell Avenue, as I recall, was key to your development success. Is that accurate, or am I remembering wrong?
Yes, ma'am. That is accurate. The improvements to Powell Avenue in some form or fashion and 23rd Street are important to our project and to the entire neighborhood, really. When you look at the current condition of Powell Avenue, yes, it is important, and we know that we need to provide parking in a practical way, or else we don't have a successful project. So we're working to address the improvements to Powell Avenue, as well as neighboring properties that can be utilized for parking in order to provide parking that we know that we're going to need, that office tenants are going to demand, and restaurant and retail tenants are going to demand. We cannot do this project with just the existing parking that's there.
Okay, do you have that aerial view that you showed us a few weeks ago that shows the current conditions?
Sure. Or I can just pull up how about I pull up a Google map aerial view? Does that work?
Oh, yeah, Google Map is fine.
Yeah. So here's Powell Avenue, 23rd Street.
So the 23rd Street space right now is what?
So it's paved concrete, and there's parking on it. It's sort of informal parking, so to speak. It's not striped particularly well, and it's certainly not efficient.
Okay, and it is going to be owned by you?
No, ma'am. That is city right-of-way, and our plan is for that to remain city right-of-way.
Okay, so no one's
This
going to
portion.
ask for a vacation of that street, so it will still be a through street.
Correct. This portion of 23rd Street, yep.
Okay, because I know in your picture you showed a bunch of tables and chairs and things out in it as if a person could not drive through.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that might be a little misleading. The rendering artist who did that kind of took some liberties, and we were kind of okay with it just because it kind of showed what ultimately would be possible, in a kind of a post-COVID world, or if we get like another pandemic where you have to have a bunch of outdoor seating. And of course, you'd have to get a permit from the city to do that. But, we left it in there as a marketing piece just to kind of show what the ultimate potential could be if you needed to do it.
Well, kind of like Pepper Place, I guess.
Yeah, you want to have a block party, something like that.
Okay. Well, this is our regular committee meeting, but if there are any members of the public who are on the line that have questions, we'll be happy to allow the applicant to answer those questions. Is there anyone here?
Hi, this is Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl Morgan.
How are you? Good to see you, Counselor.
Doing well.
I'm
It's good to see you.
calling in. I'm a neighbor of this project, and I think that it will be a great contribution to the neighborhood while maintaining the character of what this neighborhood has evolved from. So that's exciting to me. I also feel like the activation of Powell will be something that adds both to the fabric of the neighborhood, but also to the safety of the neighborhood. So I would like to voice support.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit, but I guess that's the nature of these kind of calls, but basically you're in support. Okay, got it. Okay, anyone else before I entertain a motion on this item? Hearing no one, we have a motion for approval.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Councilor John Hilliard. I would like to make a motion that we move for approval to the full council.
Okay, of the rezoning from M1 light industrial to MUD mixed use downtown district.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
well, I'll second that since I'm the only other member of the committee who's here. So it has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So that will be moved to the full council for discussion, and hopefully, Mr. Morrison, y'all can have more discussions with economic development between now and then, so that when we ask questions, there'll be something more definitive to be said about the parking, because I know without it, you can't have a project.
Yes, ma'am. We plan to do that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Sims, we are ready to go now to our other items.
You all see my screen?
We can see you.
Oh, okay, hold on, I'm trying to share my screen.
The miracles of technology.
Oh my goodness, I know.
Well, and when you're under the gun, that's when you make mistakes.
I know. I can't get to it. Okay, let's see. I got it pulled.
Okay.
Okay, it says stop sharing. Now I want to share.
We can see your screen now.
Yeah, we can see it. It's just on the wrong.
Wrong place. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this will be item 32.
Right. Okay. Yeah. 32. Okay. I forgot we went to 35. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Okay. The next three cases are the Southtown redevelopment project. The first case will be the ZAC 2020-0032 in the Southtown neighborhood. Application to change zone district boundaries from R7 multi-dwelling district to MUD, mixed use downtown. And this is filed by Brian Wolf, representing the owner, Housing Authority Birmingham District, for the property located at 2523 Southtown Court. The next case will be the ZAC 2020-00033. It's also in the Southtown neighborhood. Application to change zone district boundaries from B1, which is for the neighborhood business district, to MUD, mixed use downtown district. And this is filed by Stephen Hollinger, representing the owner, Bell South Telecommunications, LLC, for the property located at 911 23rd Street South. The next one is the ZAC 2021-0006. It's also in the Southtown neighborhood. Application to change zone district boundaries from B1 neighborhood business district to mixed use downtown. And this is also filed by Stephen Hollinger. For the address of the representing the owner, Ken Webster, for the property located at 959 23rd Street South. Okay, and the proposed uses for those three are a mixed-use development that would include affordable housing, multifamily, hotel, office, retail, medical, office, parking, garage, and open spaces. The 51 South Neighborhood Association held a special call meeting on January 6, 2021, and voted to approve the proposed rezoning request. The vote was 5 approved and 0 denied. The Southside Neighborhood Association is not meeting at this time, but Ms. Irene Johnson stated that she believes the City Council will make a good decision in the case. The zoning advisory board committee met at its regular scheduled meeting on Tuesday, February 16th, to review the applicant's rezoning request and voted to approve the proposal rezoning request with a Q condition. If approved, staff and the ZAC recommends the following Q condition: to limit the height of buildings to not exceed 225 feet. That ends the presentation for those three. And the
Okay, thank you.
applicants are on the call.
Okay, so who is Mr. Heidinger or Heidinger? I'm not sure how he pronounces it. Is he on the call, or is Ms. Clark, are you presenting, or Ms. Carpenter? Ms. Clark, I think you're muted.
So sorry. Council Abbott, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good afternoon, Councilors Abbott and Hilliard, city staff, and members of the public. I will just make some introductory remarks and hand it over to my colleague, Becky Carpenter, who will get a little more into the land use plan that we're proposing. So I'm Carol Clark. I serve as general manager of Southside Development Company, and we were selected to be the developer partner for the Housing Authority for the redevelopment of Southtown Court. SDC, which is what we nicknamed it, has 3 members. One is Corporate Realty. One is the Benoit Group, which is an African-American owned company. So I like that it's 1/3 African-American owned, so I'm just bragging. But then the 3rd member is BREC/SPM. And Stephen Heidinger, who tried to join the call, is the representative from BREC, but he had technology issues, so we're just gonna, so he won't be joining us today. But all of these companies have very deep experience in the mixture of uses that Acre described in the zoning application, as well as property management of all of these uses. Representing the owner today, Housing Authority of the Birmingham District, we have Christy Hilliard on the line, and she is with the Real Estate Department of HABD. So I'm going to ask Becky to just talk more about the land use plan before you, and she's going to introduce our intern, who may also be on the line with her.
Thank you, Carol. Yes,
Thank you.
we also have another member of our team, Amy Howard, is joining us on the call. She is our intern through the Birmingham Education Foundation's internship program. So she is working this semester with Corporate Realty, and this is her first City Council committee meeting. So she's joining us and is going to be participating throughout this process. As Carol introduced, we're a development partner with the Housing Authority, and all 3 of these cases are for the redevelopment of the property that will make up the Southtown Court redevelopment. So there are 3 different cases there because one of them is for the Housing Authority property, 2 are for 2 ancillary pieces of property that we have under option to acquire to supplement Block D. And Ms. Sims, if you have the site plan that you don't mind pulling back up, I speak from that. It was the last page that was up most recently on your presentation. So this master plan, it's a result of a significant amount of community engagement with the current residents of Southtown Court, as well as area stakeholders. We convened an advisory council back in 2018 and went through an iterative master planning process where people were able to provide feedback, and then we went back to the drawing board, continued to revise, and brought it back in a series of open houses held actually on site at Southtown Court. The resulting master plan that's in this packet for rezoning today has replacement housing, office, hotel, ground floor, retail, as well as some pocket parks and green space. The mixed-use downtown zoning classification that we're requesting is consistent with the long-range land use plan for this area. and recognizing that mixed use downtown is limitless when it comes to height. We actually proactively approached PEP staff and worked with them to determine a reasonable height limit that would be appropriate to put on this site so that that wasn't limitless. In determining that height limit, we consider the context of the area with St. Vincent's to the west and more dense urban development like UAB and the Hilton to the east along University Boulevard. We came to the determination that 225 feet was a reasonable height limit given those surrounding structures. But for the fact that historically this has been a residential site, it is actually uniquely positioned to be a more dense urban site with its layout on University and next to 31 and 280. So that is why we're going after the mixed use downtown rezoning. I can pull it up if that would be easier.
Are you back in reschedule? But what time?
So it's a 1:45 p.m. appointment on April 12th, but since it's a
All right, if everybody's able to see my screen, I have the
Sorry about
I have the site plan.
I'm sorry.
Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what we were speaking to earlier. It's a true mixed use site with replacement housing, hotel, office, additional residential, and pocket parks and green space throughout. We are maintaining 24th as a thoroughfare from the over the mountain communities into Birmingham, but we are also working on some transit-oriented development and traffic calming measures, introducing bike lanes and wider sidewalks. So this will truly be a multimodal development. We've also explored adding a bus stop to this area. So we think that this mix uses will be well served, giving its frontage on University Boulevard and with Red Mountain Expressway to the west. And I'm happy to help answer any questions anyone might have.
Go through and tell what is planned for each one of the parcels or the designated areas that are shown on the map?
Yes, ma'am. I'll start with Block A, which will actually be the last block to be developed. It will be maintained in its current configuration for a time. The residents will continue to live here on Block A, while Block D is actually being developed. Block D is going to be the first replacement housing brought back to the site. So that will be the first block to be developed. And until Block D is open and residents can move into the buildings on Block D, A will stay as the housing that's there currently. So the redevelopment for Block A will be some years into the future, but the planned uses on Block A are an office, that's the blue block here. And then we're showing this yellow and orange block. It's crosshatched because we want to determine if it would be best suited for a hotel or for additional residential based on how the rest of the site develops out over the years. This one could lend itself well to either hotel or residential. And then we're also showing a retail right here on the corner. So a small restaurant here on the corner. And the gray blocks are parking decks that you see throughout the site. I mentioned D already, so I'll start with that. D is the replacement housing. We have both a senior housing building and a family housing building coming back onto this site. I'll flip to those. This is the configuration. Is here on the left. 9th Avenue South is at the top, so Block A would be just above this. And I mentioned earlier that there are 3 rezoning cases involved because of some ancillary property that we're acquiring to supplement Block D. And those parcels are here in the bottom left corner, those pieces that we're picking up from Bell South, AT&T, and from Ken Webster. So that's why there are 3 cases involved in this. The rest of the property is all owned currently by the Housing Authority. So this is Block D with family units here on the left, senior housing on the right, and all parking pulled to the interior of the block so that the buildings could be pulled to the sidewalk and have better frontage along the sidewalk that's supporting our more pedestrian-friendly layout. Continuing across the site plan, Block B is closest to University Boulevard. It's a junior anchor retailer. We're envisioning something like Target. We would love to bring something like that here. That is just in the early stages of discussions, but we have a junior anchor sized retail space shown there on the corner. There's a parking deck here in the middle. That parking deck serves the surrounding uses, including an office building and a hotel. Whenever we work on our mixed use plans, we are also careful to balance the parking and make sure that we're creating a shared parking environment across our uses, using things like an office with daytime parking and a hotel that has overnight parking in order to both uses are able to use the same parking spaces, and we're not either overbuilding parking, which is burdensome and creates dead zones in your development. We're also careful to make sure that we're adequately parking each of the uses on the site. There's additional restaurants here on this 9th Avenue street here. There's small restaurants here at the ground floor in the hotel and surrounding some small pocket parks. 9th Avenue is going to be a good pedestrian street with some angled parking, but really deep sidewalks that would support outdoor dining at these different restaurants, and some pocket parks for some of that outdoor dining to potentially spill outside of those restaurant uses that are along the street. Continuing down to Block C, there's a central parking deck again here that is wrapped by some ground floor retail with creative office above, and then the potential for another office building here in the middle of the site. And this is additional housing. We don't yet know if this is going to be some more affordable housing or some market rate housing or a mixed income housing, but we would like to bring some more housing here. We always like to have a well-balanced mixed-use site has heads and beds, we always say, so having some residents here as well on Block C, in addition to the first phase of residential that we talked about on Block D. There's also a long green park that buffers the site from Red Mountain Expressway, offset from the Department of Transportation property, but it will link the entire site. We'd like to have a park with a trail that goes all the way through and creates a good pedestrian access above and below the site. I hope to answer the question.
Oh, yes, that is quite helpful. Can you also tell us where is the dividing line between Block B and Block C?
Sure. It continues on either side of 9th, and then we really just continue that line roughly here between this last restaurant and this pocket park. So imagine that this 9th Avenue street just kind of continues along here, south of that pocket park.
Okay, and can you tell us how many residences will be built back on the Southtown property?
Right, currently Block D has 6 family units and 160 senior units. So there's 220 there on Block D. Block C, we've not yet designed this, so we don't know how many floors or how dense it would be, what kind of configuration, if it would be a lot of 1 and 2 bedrooms or more 3 bedrooms. We're not sure yet on a unit count for that building.
And how many residences are in the Southtown development now?
Carol, take one. I don't want to misspeak.
At the start of relocation, and Christy, you can back me up, At the start of relocation, there were 421 occupied units. It's a total of 455 built units, but not all of them are in service as residences. A couple of them are offices. So I think the total possible occupancy would have been 451, but we started out with 421 occupied.
Okay, so roughly, I mean, you'll be cutting the residences about in half, roughly.
Well, I believe we're, by contract, we have to build at least 200 replacement units. But I believe we will do another phase of affordable over on Block C. You know, but whether that'll be mixed in with market or conventional is kind of where we're not. So we do plan to do additional family units in Block C in a mixed income setting. But the market is so saturated now, it's just, we just have to determine at the time what's feasible, what the mix will be.
Okay, and last question for me is how many people that live there now are coming back? Like not how many, what number, but what percentage of the people who are living in Southtown now are intending to come back? Because I know I attended a number of those meetings that you have with the residents, and some really wanted to come back and some, you know, were kind of ambivalent about it.
Well, one of the things we assured the mayor of is that anyone who wanted to return could return. And so through the assessments, we were able to get a read on that and offer them, you know, housing on the site in Block A. And there's 88 units total on the site in Block A, but relocation has not quite settled at this point. So I don't know if Christy has a ready number. Or if we'll have to get back to you on that. But the idea is, so the majority of the residents, over half, chose vouchers. So I would say we're undersubscribed for the amount of housing that we're putting back on the site.
Okay, I was just curious because some, you know, in the beginning, there were some really vocal people and their needs may have been satisfied. I was just curious. So are there, Councilor Hilliard, do you have any questions regarding anything on here? Councilor Hilliard, are you still here?
Mute myself, and I'd say, but no, I've gone through this a couple of times. I'm satisfied. I think it's an excellent project, and we've had quite a few questions about it. But I think that they've been quite efficient in answering all the questions that I have. I'm ready when you are, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, the only complaint, the only concerns that I have heard from the public and people who live mainly in the neighborhoods to the south is the height of the buildings. And I'll admit that 225 feet compared to everything else nearby seems very, very tall to me. So, you know, that would be a question. And I realize that the buildings that you want to have that 225-foot option on are not scheduled to be built until I guess there's a market for them. But that's the only real concern that I have, is having heard from people who think that it will be like something sticking up like a sore thumb, you know, amongst other buildings that are much, much, much lower. So can y'all talk about that height and whether that's really something that is like needed?
Sure. So when we looked at that height, one of the ways that we arrived at that number was in looking at what's around it. So we looked at St. Vincent's and actually at this building that you can just barely see on the screen. And that building, I believe, was 12 or 14 stories high. And then we also looked at the Hilton, which is just down the way, slightly off screen here to the left. And Hilton is 15 stories high. So we were looking at some of that context along University Boulevard. We're not looking at doing anything that high on the southern side of the site. As you saw, it's going to be replacement housing here on D. The height would really be on the side of the site that faces University Boulevard, which I believe is a more urban site and lends itself to being more dense, given what's going on along University Boulevard. And it's consistent with, the comp plan and the VA hospitals here. It's not shown in this image, but University has a lot of height along it and does serve density better than the side of the site. So where we're looking at doing anything approaching 225 would be along University Boulevard.
Okay, so how tall is the VA building?
That I haven't measured.
Okay, and which one were you saying that was nearby? Because the Hilton is blocks down the street on 20th. It's not really nearby. What was you said you were pointing to something, but we couldn't see your cursor.
Oh, right. So yeah, I was referring to the Hilton, which is just down to the left here. Here's 23rd, 22nd, 21st. So Hilton's just off the screen to the left. And then I was also referring to St. Vincent's here, where there's the towers.
Oh, okay, okay. But it's down in a hole and you're not. I guess it's not in a hole, it's in a dip. I'm not sure what you would call it, a depression in the topography. Okay, well, is there anyone else who is on the call that wishes to speak? Do we still have Ms. Sanfilippo, or have you dropped off?
I'm here, Councilor Abbott. I think that you got our point across that we were concerned with the 225-foot height. We just wanted to make that point. Our zoning committee looked at it, and that was the overarching concern, and we felt like 100 feet would be more appropriate. We also realized it's not in our neighborhood, so just wanted to share that input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, the people that I have heard from live in the Highland Park neighborhood, and their comments were that, when they look out their window, they'll see these big giant buildings and nothing else. So, I guess the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But I guess my question for the development group is, would lowering the maximum height cause great injury to the project?
Councilor Abbott, I would like to just comment that we did discuss this after we had the comment. We appreciate, the thoughtful, rigorous engagement that we received from Highland Park. They certainly do, make us think about what we're doing, and we came back and talked about it. But while the market may not support the sort of density that could be achieved at the site today, we think it would not be good to, tie the hands of this site, which is an important commercial site in the city for future economic development. So given that the zoning classification has no height limit, we thought that, introducing a maximum height, and that doesn't mean we will try to develop to the maximum height. We just thought imposing a maximum of about 15 stories would be something we sort of volunteered to introduce with our application for the MUD, so that it wasn't unlimited. So we just think this is an important economic development site, and at someday we could possibly achieve more density on this site than maybe the market supports today. And we would hate to see this site limited to a much, lower density or medium density.
Yeah, well, to me, this isn't downtown. And so putting mixed use downtown in this location seems to me to be a real stretch of the zoning ordinance. Basically, I'm going to be supportive of the residents because they're the ones that are going to have to live with this forever. And all of the, let's face it, developers come and developers go, but they don't have to look out their windows and see, what they've built every day. That's my problem with it, is just mixed use downtown is for downtown. And I don't see this as downtown. I see this as midtown. Just me. It's not downtown Birmingham. And if you were to build several 225-foot tall buildings, once again, it would look like it would kind of stick out like a sore thumb, because the closest thing that's got any height is St. Vincent's on the other side of the Red Mountain Expressway. So, my only deep problem with this thing is the height. 225 feet is just, it's just out of scale to me with what else is in the area and with the residences that are behind it. So that's my issue. If the height was not 225 feet, I could support it.
But that's the height maximum that anything could be built to. So I don't,
But that means a 225-foot building could be built. Yes, it's the maximum, but if we approve it, you can build to the max. And as you may or may not know, we have had a lot of issues recently with people wanting to build insanely tall buildings right where people have 2-story homes and 3-story homes at the max. And so you have these monstrous buildings that are, infringing on people's views. And that's a real issue for folks that actually live there, and are going to be affected every day. So the height is a big issue. Building heights adjacent to residential neighborhoods are just a big issue. And I won't be supporting it at 225 feet in height. So that being said, anyone else who would like to speak regarding this issue, or do you, the representatives of the developer, have any comments?
Councilor, I just want to say a few words if I might.
Okay, where are you?
This is Tim Brown.
Hey, Tim.
Hey. I think what Becky was saying earlier is that, the possibility of those tall buildings is on 8th Avenue. And I think, I may be wrong, but the way we were looking at that area in the land use plan going forward in the rezoning of downtown is the automotive district has got a lot of potential to change. A lot of low-slung buildings, many of those buildings don't have a whole lot of character. Some of them do. But for the most part, within a couple of avenues, 2 or 3 avenues of there, that whole area there we see as a big transition area. And so from this point, say midpoint, or maybe 1 block south of 8th Avenue, and then going back 3 or 4 blocks north of 8th Avenue, we see that kind of as an area that's ripe for a lot of change in the future, and probably some taller buildings. Not necessarily 225 feet, but what I think we intend to rezone most of that to is a district that would allow for 125 feet, and then you would have some height bonuses for affordable housing and for activation of the street level. And so, and that's, I think partly that's where we came up with 225, is that the intent was to do mixed use high in this area, which would allow for 125 foot buildings. But then if you did affordable housing, that would meet the standard. And then if you did the first floor activation, you could get to 225 based on those bonuses. And so I think that's kind of what we're based on. And then I think Becky had mentioned that really the only place they intend to have a tall building, that would be somewhere in this neighborhood would be on an 8th Avenue frontage. And then moving north from there 3 or 4 blocks, that area just seems ripe for change in there. And what's the next park side? What's the next, south side? Maybe it's the automotive district. And Lakeview is seeing a lot of activity right now. But so, and then just north or just south of this site, we would rezone that to a combination of mixed use medium, hopefully, and the character district that would limit the height to 80 feet. The medium 60, the CD5A 80, the CD5 125. So the point is it scales down from 8th Avenue as you go south. From the mixed use high, which could get you to 225, to this mixed use or CD5A, which would go to 80, and then the mixed use medium would go to 60. And so, especially the south side, from south side back over to this side, there'll be a lot of mixed use medium and a lot of that CD5A, which would limit heights to 60 and 80 feet. And so the 60 would be applied, just like you're talking about. If you've got a 110-year-old antebellum beautiful home, that's not the right term, Victorian home on Allen Avenue, well, that probably should be mixed use medium in the general area around it to protect those historic assets. Southside currently is zone B3, which has unlimited height. And so we want to change all that and limit that height to 60 to 80 feet, all throughout the site. So point being is that I think that this kind of fits into the strategy we've got going forward. If you go north from, say, about 3rd or 4th Avenue in this general area, getting back to this the last case we heard at 1st Avenue South, I think all of that, where there's a lot of historic assets in there, especially around the Rotary Trail, across the tracks to Morris Avenue, I think all of that, we want to make sure that we protect the height in those areas to protect those historic assets.
Okay, but whose plan is this? Because I don't think that's
the neighborhoods. It's the north side plan.
No, it's not the neighborhood people's plan.
Well,
it's somebody else's plan.
It is. They've seen it. They've already seen it once. We'll go back to them again. We're not. We haven't really had the opportunity because of COVID to have a really robust back and forth. We've only met one time in each community and shown them the zoning maps. And they made some comments. We're reacting to those comments and making changes, and we'll go back to them when the environment gets better. And we'll continue to go back to them until we develop consensus. But I think that point being that where there's opportunity to have more density is going to be good for the city. It's good for lots of reasons. The higher density mixed use areas you're going to have in your city are going to produce your highest tax base. The developer is going to make more money off of that property. There's going to be more tax revenue, whether it's property tax or sales tax, generally speaking. The density will support smart growth ideas about transit and walkability. I know we're always talking about parking. Well, the more dense we can develop downtown, the less parking we'll actually need. And we can better utilize the resources we have, especially land. The more density you can develop, another benefit to that, and the less parking you have to build, is the more affordable housing you can build. every housing development that's built has 20 to 30% of their cost in parking, right? So the more dense you can build, the less parking you build, the more affordable housing you can build. It's interesting how all zoning ordinances across America have requirements for parking that drive up the cost of housing, but we have no requirements for affordable housing, you know? And so that's a big issue for the city is, you know, where we can create density, it's going to make the city function better. It's going to make us have more revenue, and it's going to create more affordable housing in the city. So, you know, there's a trade-off, you know, some people would talk about a view, that sort of thing. You know, some people, those people that live on the ridge on Red Mountain, their view is downtown in the city. I think it's a pretty cool view myself, but if it were next door to me, yeah, I might not like that. I wouldn't want a 200-foot building next door to my house, no doubt about it. And especially, so in those cases, and also in case if you have historic resources that you want to protect, it's very important to manage that height. We've always wanted to, you know, adjust the way our height is done downtown. You know, as it is now, you know, the unlimited heights, you know, you suck up all the, you know, atmosphere and there's nothing to spread around, you know. But where you have the opportunity to create these little pockets that are more intense and more dense, I think there's a lot of value to that. At the same time, you got to protect those other resources too. So it's a balance.
Well, it is, but I'm more interested in protecting the rights of residents of Birmingham than developers and then the city's pocketbook, because that's not ultimately what's most important. The most important thing is the citizens who've chosen to live in Birmingham rather than fleeing to the suburbs.
I get you. But if you don't have enough revenue, you can't clean up the park, you can't build the street, you know, you can't create quality of life. It's a really delicate balance. I remember we were doing a comprehensive plan out in Alabaster back in 1990, and they wanted to get rid of, you know, all the commercial stuff. They wanted to have really strict limits on building size for single family. You know, like the smallest house you could build there would be 2,200 square feet. And, you know, we were just really, you know, perplexed by how they thought they were going to be able to generate enough revenue to support everything they were doing, you know. So it's a balance, you know, you got to maintain. And like I say, I think that the way this steps down from 8th Avenue towards South Side is appropriate. And then that little pocket that might, you know, the automotive district, you know, may change a little bit over time. And I think that's a good place for some density and some height. And we're going to be talking about all of this in our community meetings. I think you were at the Southside community meeting when we did at Volk.
Absolutely.
Right. And so we'll do that over and over and over again until we've developed consensus. At the same time, you know, I mean, I don't want to do things that are, you know, that just don't make sense. You know, I want to make sure that's appropriate. And, you know, we'll have a big back and forth conversation. That's maybe more than we need to talk about here. But just saying that I think the way this developed situated, that we've got the right numbers here.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with you. I think 225 feet tall in this location, your step down is within a 2-block area. You go from 225 feet to 45 feet. And that's just too big of a difference in height. It's just too much.
Well, and I think some of the argument the other way would be that, you know, the value of that real estate along 8th Avenue is very high. And in order to recoup and build something there that's viable, you know, you got to have the density to make it work. So
and this is public housing property that we're talking
about. It
is.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And that's another good point, that they're going to benefit tremendously from this. You know, they own the site.
But they're not going to live there.
No, they don't. They're not. Well, some will. And I think it's going to be a really high quality development. And beside that fact, they're going to have an equity stake. And they're going to use those assets to provide for others. You know?
Yes. Okay. And Councilor Abbott, if I might, the Housing Authority is investing with this land because of such a unique asset for them compared to many other land assets. So they will be an equity partner and look, act somewhat entrepreneurially in this redevelopment to generate income that can help them further their core mission across the city. So
Yeah,
I just wanted
that's
to
good.
kind of elucidate that point a little bit.
Thank you. Mr. Hilliard, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we move it to the full council with the caveat of them meeting more with you and talking more on the height. So I would like to see it come to the full council. We've been working on this a lot. I recognize that the Housing Authority would be an equity partner, so I like to work through it. I think it's a very valuable property for the Housing Authority and great revenue for the city of Birmingham. I'm a little perplexed. I like to discuss it more, but we can talk about it as it comes to the full council. So with that, I like to make a motion. We move it to the full council.
With our recommendation or without?
I think we could, well, from my perspective, we could talk about it once it gets there to make sure that you're clarified. I'm not so much opposed to the fact is that I like the scenic view that you get from looking over the city. So I think, but I have to think about it more and look at it more. But I would like to move forward so that we can really get this thing going and not hold them up. They've been at it for a while.
Okay, well, if your recommendation is to move it to the full council with no recommendation, then I will second.
Okay.
But I'm not willing to recommend it to the council because the height is just too much.
Well, let's do it, and you say it, and we'll go from there. If that's what if that's what can make it happen.
Yeah, so your motion is to send it to the full council with no recommendation from the committee. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, well then I will second that motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there are none to oppose because I don't think Mr. Parker has joined us. So we have done our duty today.
And thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So this is the end of our meeting unless there is any discussion of any, I don't know of anything else we need to discuss. So I think that we are ready to have a motion to adjourn.
Ms. Abbott, we have one more item. The DRC was requesting that the P&Z committee reappoint 4 existing DRC members.
Okay, well, we haven't even had an opportunity to consider them yet. So what is who are the ones that we are being asked to reappoint?
A Brian Wolf, a Ivan Holloway, and A. Barnes, and a Scott Burnett.
Okay, and they've all served one term?
Yes, their term expired July 30th, 2020.
Okay, and for all of them, that was their first term on design review?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Is Carla on the call?
Yeah.
I am on the call.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that for Councilman Abbott.
Yes. They were serving their first term, so they would be eligible for reappointment of a 3-year term.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilor Hilliard.
Yes, I am familiar with those names, most of them, and I know that they're very involved. I know Ivan Holloway with the downtown urban redevelopment and the others. Their hearts are pure in the development of the city, and they have been participating. So I would like to move for approval at the appropriate time.
Okay, well, I'm in agreement with you, and the only question that I always like to ask is about attendance of all these people, because I know that in the past, we've had problems with people being put on boards and agencies and then sort of neglecting to participate. And so I just want to make sure that all of these people that are being recommended by the staff for reappointment are people who have been diligent about attending the meetings.
Yes, ma'am. They all have very actively attended meetings. So yes, they've attended the majority of the meetings, each one.
Okay. Okay, then I will second Counselor Hilliard's motion to approve reappointment of all of the first termers so they can become second termers. So is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that passes, and we will send that recommendation to the full council. Now we are, and I'm sorry, I didn't even notice that when I went through the agenda. Well, now we are to old and new business. Do we have any old or new business? Okay, I think the design review committee was probably our old business because we've needed to do that for a while. So now, Mr. Hilliard, we are ready for a motion to adjourn.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that motion. All in favor say aye.
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 So thank you very much to everyone for your participation, and I will shut my phone down now. So thank you, and we'll see you again very soon, probably.